I've always believed the world spoke in volumes. News anchors, emergency sirens, yelling children at the grocery store. But sometimes the loudest warning doesn't shout. It whispers. That morning started with the same quiet fog that always wrapped around our modest Montana home, the kind that makes everything feel slightly out of focus. It should have been peaceful. It wasn't. Elowen sat cross-legged at the breakfast table, tracing the edge of her cereal bowl with her index finger. Her spoon hadn't touched the milk. That alone made my stomach twitch. She usually finished her breakfast faster than I could pour my coffee. I let the silence stretch for another beat, then asked gently, "Something wrong with the cereal, kiddo?" She didn't look up. Just shook her head once, slow. "No, Mommy." The words were there, but the voice, off, small, hollow. I let it go, pretending to check my phone while really watching her reflection in the toaster. Her eyes flicked toward the window. Then back to her bowl. That was the first sign. Later that morning, I got a voicemail from my sister Eris. Her voice was syrupy sweet, and that was problem number one. Eris didn't do syrup unless she wanted something. "Hey, Seraphine, listen, I know it's last minute, but we're putting together something small for Grandpa's remembrance. Just close family, Utah. This weekend. It would mean a lot if you came, especially Elowen. The kids ask about her all the time. Let me know, okay?" There was no mention of what day, no who else was coming, and no call from anyone else in the family to confirm it. That was problem number two. But I'm a creature of obligation, raised in a house where keeping up appearances came before asking the right questions. I texted her back a short, "Will come, leaving Friday morning." No emoji, no smiley. Still, she replied with 3 hearts and "Yay! Can't wait." I stared at the screen until the dots stopped dancing. That night, as I packed a duffel bag with snacks, sunscreen, and the little things I knew Elowen needed for long car rides, the doorbell rang. I opened the door to find Eris smiling, holding a red nylon bag. "Hey, figured I'd drop this off now, some of Grandpa's old keepsakes. I know we'll be swamped this weekend, so easier to just hand it off." Her voice was casual, but her hands clutched that bag too tightly, like she didn't want to let go, but had to. Elowen stood behind me, quiet. When I turned to say something, she was staring at the bag, her lips slightly parted, no sound coming out. "It's heavy," I said, half laughing, trying to cut the tension. "Yeah, lots of paper. Photos and old letters. You'll love going through it." She touched my shoulder lightly, too lightly, and said goodbye before I could ask more. After she left, Elowen stayed by the door. "What's in the bag?" she asked. "Just old stuff from Grandpa," I replied, sliding it under the bed. "Don't worry about it." The next morning, she didn't speak much, scribbled in her notebook while I double-checked directions. I caught glimpses of her drawings, lines, boxes, something like a van? But I didn't question it. I should have. She barely looked me in the eye. "Do we have to go?" she asked once, voice almost inaudible. "Yes," I said, because what else do you say to a child when everything looks normal on the outside, but your gut keeps knocking? By mid-morning, we were on the road. I played a kid's playlist, but Elowen didn't hum along like usual. Her fingers picked at the hem of her jeans. I glanced back in the mirror. She looked pale. We were 3 hours from the Utah line when it happened. Just after we passed a rest stop, on a long, empty stretch of highway, her voice cut through the static of the radio like glass through fabric. "Turn the car around, now." It wasn't a question. It wasn't a whine. I blinked. "What did you say?" She didn't repeat herself, and just stared ahead. Her face was pale, but her voice didn't shake the second time. "Please, turn around." I pulled to the shoulder instinctively, hazard lights blinking like a silent scream. My heart pounded. I looked at her through the rearview mirror. Her eyes didn't meet mine. They were focused on something far away, something I couldn't see but she clearly could. I didn't ask why. I didn't tell her to calm down. I didn't even argue. I turned the wheel. Dean Koontz once wrote, "Intuition is seeing with the soul." That day, I didn't need evidence. I didn't need logic. I had a daughter who never asked for much, and a whisper that split my world in two. As I turned the wheel, I felt the pull of every story I'd never been allowed to tell. And this time, I wasn't driving into silence. We didn't speak for the next 20 miles. The road coiled ahead of us in long, steady stretches. Trees blurred into one another like smudged charcoal on a sketchpad. I kept my hands at 10 and 2, pretending to focus on the drive, but every nerve in my body was tuned to the girl in the back seat. I could feel her watching me, or maybe she was just trying to figure out if I'd already chosen not to listen. Elowen tugged at her hoodie sleeve and slowly pulled a piece of folded paper from the pocket. She didn't offer it right away. She stared at it first, like it held something fragile or dangerous, maybe both. I glanced in the mirror and caught her eyes. She looked older in that moment, not in years, just in weight. She handed me the drawing. "I didn't know if I should show you," she said quietly. I waited for a turnoff, pulled onto a gravel shoulder, and unfolded the paper. It was a child's drawing, yes, but it wasn't innocent. There was a red bag. Our red bag. There was a boxy van, blacked-out windows, a man, sunglasses, long coat, standing at the edge of what looked like our driveway. I felt something tighten around my chest, not fear exactly, more like recognition dressed as denial. "When did you see this?" "Last night," she whispered. "He was standing there, near Eris's car. I thought maybe it was someone she knew." My knuckles tensed on the wheel. I wanted to tell her she imagined it, that she was dreaming or confusing something from TV, but that would have been a lie. I knew what I felt when Eris handed me that bag. I ignored it then. I couldn't afford to ignore anything now. We merged back onto the road. I turned the radio down to a whisper and watched the rear-view mirror like it was a crime scene. About 15 minutes later, just past a worn-out rest stop, I saw it. That same silver Honda SUV, the one I remembered from earlier in the day, parked 2 spots down when we'd gassed up. At first, I thought it was coincidence, maybe a common route. But when I slowed, it slowed. When I changed lanes, it waited, then followed. "Elowen," I said carefully. "Do you know that car?" She didn't even glance. "It's Aunt Eris's friend. I saw him at her house. He smelled like old gum and metal." I looked again. Utah plates. Of course. Why would someone from Eris's circle be tailing us out here? I tried to explain it away. He could be on his way to the same town, maybe heading to the gathering too. I repeated that logic like a prayer, even as it cracked inside my chest. But then, as I switched lanes near an upcoming intersection, he did too. 3 times, same timing, same speed. Coincidences have boundaries. This one just stepped out of line. I took the next exit, pretending it was for gas. The car followed. As I pulled into the gas station, I parked beside the farthest pump. The SUV coasted down the road and parked 2 buildings away, near a boarded-up diner. He didn't get out. "Bathroom?" I asked Elowen. She nodded but didn't move. "I'll go in first. Just sit tight." Inside, I didn't buy anything. I didn't use the restroom. I stood near the dusty coffee machine and watched through the window. The man hadn't moved, just sat there, engine running, like he had nowhere else to be. But here... I stepped back outside, pulled out my phone, and sent Sable a single phrase. "Marble jar overturned." It was a code we came up with years ago, after a break-in at our neighbor's. It meant, "We're in danger. I'm not explaining. Help quietly." No reply. I waited 5 minutes. 10. Still nothing. That's when the panic stopped feeling abstract. Back in the car, I sat for a moment, trying to steady my breath. My hands were sweating, despite the cool air. Elowen leaned forward, her voice calm, almost too calm. "Are we still going?" I looked at her, really looked. She wasn't panicked. She was resolved, like she knew something I didn't. Or maybe, like she was waiting to see if I would finally act like the mother she needed me to be. I looked back toward the road. The Honda was gone. Or hiding. We pulled out of the lot, slowly, my eyes darting to every reflection, every movement. My foot hovered over the brake, unsure if I should keep moving or slam it down and turn us around again. "Elowen," I said softly, "why didn't you tell me sooner?" She didn't answer right away, then quietly, "I didn't think you'd believe me. You always give people chances, even when they don't deserve them." The words hit harder than anything she'd drawn. I gripped the steering wheel. "That's changing." She looked down, then back up. "Please don't let them take me." There it was. No metaphor. No more games. Just 8 words. My hands didn't shake this time. I knew what they meant. Knew what was at stake. Because the hardest part of being a mother isn't keeping them safe from the world, it's knowing which world to protect them from. And sometimes, that world looks a whole lot like family. I didn't turn the car around because I was brave. I did it because for the first time, I knew I was being hunted. I didn't know where we were going, only where we weren't. And that, finally, was enough. The trees began to thin as I pulled into a remote rest stop off the highway. The kind only locals or lost souls ever use. No vending machines, no working lights in the bathroom. Just a battered wooden picnic table, a faded map nailed to a splintered post, and a pit toilet with the door half off its hinges. It was the kind of place built for decisions you didn't want anyone to witness. I turned off the ignition, and silence took the front seat. Elowen was curled up in the back, hoodie pulled over her face, legs tucked tight to her chest like she was trying to fold herself into safety. I didn't wake her. She needed the sleep more than I needed company. I sat for a moment, fingers drumming against the wheel, then reached for the glove compartment, more out of restlessness than purpose. Something slid out, light but sharp at the edges, like it had been waiting to be found. A white envelope with my name on it in Eris's handwriting. I didn't recognize it. Inside was a printed family photo. Last Christmas. In the backyard of our mother's house, string lights glowing like something out of a magazine shoot. Everyone was there. Everyone but me. And Elowen. I stared at it. My brother, his wife, Eris's kids, even that cousin we never liked. All beaming, matching sweaters, mugs raised in some fake toast. I flipped it over. To remember what matters. Love, Eris. I sat back, photo in hand, and stared through the windshield. The air outside looked too still for this kind of betrayal. But betrayal doesn't need noise to do damage. That Christmas, I'd left early because a client crisis had popped up. I texted Eris, asked them to wait for the photo until I could get back. She said sure, said they'd stall. I believed her. That was my mistake. "When you're left out long enough," I whispered, "you stop asking to be included." I let the photo fall to the passenger seat and unlocked my phone. A dozen notifications blinked up. Bank reminder, 2 missed calls, some automated emails, and one message, unknown number. I tapped it open. "Don't let them take her. They don't need you anymore." It had come through an hour before we'd left the house. I reread it. Then again. My hands went cold. The timestamp stared back at me like it knew something I didn't. It had been buried under alerts from the grocery app and Elowen's school calendar. Whoever sent that message knew. Knew what was about to happen. Knew I wasn't part of the plan. I wanted to call someone. But who? Sable hadn't answered my last text. My mother would twist this into concern. Eris would just say I was overreacting. That's how they kept me quiet. Gaslight by affection. My fingers hovered over the keypad, then dropped. Instead, I stared at the rearview mirror. Elowen's face peeked out from under her hoodie, just barely. Her lips were parted slightly, as if even in sleep, she was trying to say something. I thought about the way Eris said goodbye that morning. Hug too tight, voice too upbeat, the kind of cheer that smells of staging. And Mom. Mom had looked at Elowen like she was already gone. Not fondness, not even pride, like she'd closed a deal. They weren't saying goodbye, I said aloud. They were signing her over. The phrase hung in the air like fog. I turned and looked at my daughter, really looked, and saw it all at once. The unease, the drawings, the moment she begged me to turn the car around. This wasn't just a scare, this was a handoff, and I had been the delivery truck. I sat for another few minutes, but the stillness wasn't quiet anymore. It was suffocating. I reached for the photo again, studied each smiling face. They looked so proud, so put together. Like they'd found the perfect Christmas. Maybe they had. It just didn't include me or my daughter. And I think that was the point. I reached for the keys, turned the ignition. Elowen stirred as the engine hummed back to life. "Where are we going?" she mumbled. "Not there," I said. "Anywhere but there." She nodded, eyes still half shut. "Good." As we pulled back onto the road, her voice floated from the back, softer than before, but clear. "Don't let them take me." And suddenly, the message didn't feel like a warning anymore. It felt like confirmation. "You don't realize how many ghosts live inside a family photo," I murmured, "until you find yourself missing from it." I didn't know where we were headed, didn't have a map or a destination, but I knew we weren't going back, and that was finally enough. The light was fading faster than usual. You'd think the sun had caught on to our detour and was trying to beat us to wherever we were going. Elowen hadn't said much since the rest stop. Her eyes were open, watching the landscape blur past the window, but she wasn't really seeing any of it. I didn't blame her. I was barely holding it together myself, one knuckle-white grip on the steering wheel at a time. Her whisper echoed in my head. "Don't let them take me." It wasn't the fear in her voice that stuck with me. It was the certainty. I took the next exit without a word, just veered right down a quiet county road that looped away from the highway. No GPS, no destination, only instinct. "You're not going back, are you?" Elowen finally asked, her voice small. "No," I said. "We're not." She exhaled like she'd been holding her breath all afternoon. We stopped at a lone gas station just before the sun slipped behind the hills. It looked half abandoned, faded signage, a dusty front window, one pump still working. I stepped out, stretched, and went around to the back seat to grab Elowen's jacket. It had gotten chilly. That's when I noticed it. On her sleeve, near the elbow. White powder, not a lot, just a dusting. But it wasn't food, it wasn't dirt. I lifted the fabric and sniffed. Sterile, synthetic, chemical. My mind flashed to Eris, the hug. How she bent down, wrapped Elowen tight, pressing her hands just there. I dropped the jacket like it bit me. Inside the gas station, while Elowen sat with a bag of pretzels, I Googled quietly, white powders, drug residue, tracking dust. Every search result made my chest constrict tighter. I went back to the car, opened the trunk, and pulled out the red bag. I didn't unzip it yet. I just stared at it, like it might confess. "We're being followed," I said out loud, mostly to myself. Elowen looked up. "Why?" I didn't have an answer that made sense to a child. Hell, it barely made sense to me. I opened the bag. Inside were layers of clothes, a toiletry kit, books, but the way it was packed felt intentional, like a magician's box, something hidden beneath the ordinary. I pulled apart the lining, and there it was. A seam opened to reveal a strip of plastic wrap tucked in the corner, edges taped down. I didn't touch it. I didn't need to. Whatever it wasn't mine. I zipped it shut, gently, and put it back. That's when my phone buzzed. A message from Eris. "ETA? Nothing else. No, how's the drive? No, need anything? Just ETA. I didn't answer. Instead, I pulled into the parking lot of a nearby public library, parked beneath a camera, just in case. I turned off my phone, pulled the keys from the ignition, and sat back. "You okay?" Elowen asked. "No," I said. "But I'm awake." She nodded. Then leaned over and whispered, "I knew you'd see it." My hands trembled for the first time since leaving home, because the moment you stop being predictable, that's when predators start to panic. I sat there for what felt like a year and a half. The library parking lot was quiet except for the hum of cicadas and the occasional click of a truck door closing somewhere out of sight. Elowen was still in the back, eyes fluttering open and shut, caught in that foggy place between sleep and a dream you don't want to return to. I opened the trunk. The red bag stared up at me like it had a mouthful of teeth. I unzipped it carefully, like I was diffusing something that might scream. Inside, at first, it was what Eris said it would be. Sweaters, a weathered book of poems, a toiletry kit so clean it felt staged. But beneath the second zipper was something else. A tablet with a cracked corner. A burner phone, still powered off. A thick envelope marked with my name in Eris's loopy handwriting, too perfect, like she practiced signing her lies. Under the flap, I found a folded set of documents, tightly rubber-banded, a birth certificate, fake as Monopoly money, and a medical intake form, blank, untouched, ready for someone else's narrative, and underneath it all, a GPS tracker, small, blinking green like a heartbeat. They weren't even trying to hide it well. That was the part that broke me more than anything, the arrogance. They thought I wouldn't check. Or worse, they counted on it. I took photos of everything with my phone, uploading them to a secure folder in my backup email, labeled the subject line, Insurance, Do Not Delete. Then I opened my text thread with Eris, deleted every word, every message. I wiped the call log, cleared browser tabs, powered the phone off, and pulled the battery just in case. I turned to Elowen. Her face was flushed, breath uneven. I pressed my hand to her forehead, warm, too warm. I reached for her backpack, fished out the children's acetaminophen, and poured it into the tiny cup. She stirred, barely lifting her head. The lady said if I tell, I'll get taken away. I froze. What lady, Elle? She didn't answer. Her fingers tugged at the blanket, curling it tight. The one with perfume, like Nana's. Lumen. I swallowed the curse that nearly escaped my throat. My mother. I wanted to scream. Instead, I nodded. It's okay. You're not going anywhere. I promise. She drifted off again, cheeks flushed red against the window glass. Inside the library bathroom, I washed my face, stared at the woman in the mirror, hair frizzy from wind, lips pale, eyes raw, and underneath all that, something sharper than anger, something clean. This is what a mother looks like before a storm, I whispered. I bought water and more meds from a nearby gas station, paid in cash, avoided eye contact, didn't speak unless I had to. Didn't leave prints unless they'd wash away with the next dust storm. By the time the sun dipped low behind the trees, I was back on the road. We drove in silence for hours, letting the dusk fill in all the answers I was too tired to voice. Then, without warning, I took a turn onto a familiar road, one I hadn't driven in years. The map in my mind clicked into place. It wasn't home, it was where home used to be. Elowen blinked awake as we passed the old sign that marked the edge of town. Why are we going here? I kept my eyes on the road. Because they wanted me to carry something across a line. I think it's time they carry it on their own doorstep. She didn't ask more, just leaned her head back against the window, watching the town unfold like a memory trying to forget itself. They thought they were writing the script, that I was the actor playing a part they cast without permission. They forgot what happens when silence stops cooperating. We crossed into Utah just as the sun melted behind the hills. That kind of dusk where everything turns to molasses, soft amber light casting long, slow shadows. Elowen was asleep again, her breath steady now, curled beneath the spare jacket I draped over her shoulders. You'd think nothing could touch her in that moment. But everything already had. I stayed off the freeway and took the back roads I grew up on. The names of the streets hadn't changed, Oak Ridge, Riverbend, Hollow Creek, but they no longer sounded like home. They read like warnings, each one dragging a memory behind it like a heavy chain. I knew every shortcut, every hidden turn, the ones Eris and I used to bike through when we still believed this place meant safety. But tonight, I wasn't circling nostalgia, I was closing a loop. My phone buzzed. I didn't have to look. I already knew. I glanced down. Eris, it said. I let it ring out. A minute later, another buzz. A text. Did the bag get there? That was it. No. Are you okay? No. Where are you? Just a delivery status request. I didn't reply. Didn't need to. That message said everything. She hadn't cared if we arrived safely, just whether the payload did. A few streets later, Elowen stirred. She sat up halfway, blinking sleep from her lashes. She said, I wouldn't go home, if I told. I kept my eyes on the road. Elle? I said gently. Who said that to you? She looked down, fingers tracing the seam of her jeans. The lady who smells like Nana. That was it. The missing piece. I didn't need more. My mother. Lumen. Not just silent in all this, but an architect. The house came into view before I was ready. Same white porch, same fake rock planter near the stairs. The porch light flickered. Always has. I pulled up slowly, engine low. I didn't knock. I unbuckled my seatbelt, walked around to the trunk, and pulled out the red duffel bag. The one they trusted me to carry across the state line like I was their hired mule. I slung it over my shoulder and walked up the steps. No one opened the door. I didn't expect them to. I bent, placed the bag directly in front of the threshold, centered and quiet like a gift nobody deserved. Then I looked up, right into the Ring camera. I made sure it caught every word. You left me out of the picture. I'm returning what was never mine. I turned around. I didn't wait for footsteps or voices or some dramatic confrontation. I walked back to the car the same way I came, measured, controlled. Elowen was watching from the back seat. "Did we make it?" she asked, voice a rasp. "No, baby," I said, sliding into the driver's seat. "We made it out." I turned the car around and didn't look back. We drove for a long while in silence. Town after town blurred by. I didn't turn on the radio, didn't touch my phone, until it buzzed. One more text from Eris. "You've made a huge mistake." I deleted it. For hours, nothing followed. No calls, no alerts, no pings, until 2:37 a.m. A voicemail from my mother's number. I didn't hesitate. I pressed play. Her voice was steady, hollow. "Where's the bag?" That was it. 4 words. No panic. No questions about us. Just inventory control. I stared at the screen for a long time, then whispered, "You just told on yourself." And now I was done playing the part. It was my turn to write the next scene. The motel room smelled like old bleach and newer regret. The kind of place where everything was technically clean, but nothing felt safe. We'd paid in cash. I made sure the car was backed in, not pulled through. No lights, no noise. Elowen slept in her clothes, curled against her pillow. The television turned to a blank channel for ambient noise. I sat on the edge of the bed with my laptop open, not working, just checking. Refreshing email, refreshing again. And then it came. Subject line, "Just checking on you," from my boss's email. But my boss never called me Sarah. That's the name only Eris and Mom used when they wanted to sound casual while sharpening a knife behind their back. The body of the email was short. "Heard you took a few days off. Hope you and the little one are doing okay. Let me know if you need anything." I stared at it. The wording was just off enough. And the phrasing, "the little one," that wasn't something my boss had ever said aloud. He called Elowen "your daughter," always respectfully distant. I took a screenshot, archived the email to a hidden folder, and deleted it from my inbox. Someone in my family had spoofed it. Someone who knew how to make it look real enough to trick a system, but not a daughter. I powered off the laptop and pushed it aside. My hands went to my phone next. I didn't want to call him, but I had to. Sable answered on the 3rd ring. "Hey," he said like we hadn't been at war, like this was any Tuesday. "I'm only going to ask this once," I said. "How long have you known Eris was using me?" Silence. Then finally, "I didn't think it would go this far." "That's not an answer," he exhaled. "I owed her. During the pandemic, I helped move a property she was flipping. It wasn't above board. I signed off on some things to get her a better rate. She promised no one would ever look too close. And you thought that gave her a right to use our daughter as a—" "I didn't know, Seraphine. I swear to God I didn't know she'd go this far. She just said, if I didn't keep quiet, she'd come after my assets, that we'd both be screwed." "So you stayed quiet, and you let me drive across state lines with a bag you never asked about?" "I thought it was just scare tactics." I laughed, sharp, joyless. "That's what they count on, Sable. That you'll let them push as long as it doesn't feel like violence. But this was violence." "I'm sorry." "No, you're not. You're scared. There's a difference." He didn't argue. I'm not coming home, I said. You won't hear from us again unless I want you to. And I don't. Not now. I ended the call. Blocked his number. Elowen turned in her sleep, one hand falling off the bed. I bent down and pulled the covers over her, brushing a curl from her cheek. No more men who confuse love with cowardice, I whispered. At dawn, I walked out to check the car and felt it immediately. A chill, not in the air, but in the space itself. A silver sedan parked across the street, same make, same tint, same dent near the bumper, the one that had followed us before. I didn't panic. Instead, I pulled out my phone and circled around the vehicle, pretending to stretch my legs. Took a clear photo of the license plate. No driver in sight. Message sent. I went back to the room, packed slowly. No need to rush, yet. Elowen was up, brushing her hair with the wide tooth comb I'd always packed at the bottom of the bag. Her eyes met mine. They're still following us, right? Yes. She didn't flinch. Okay. 10 minutes before checkout, there was a knock. Not housekeeping. Not front desk. The sound had weight. I checked the peephole. A woman in a long coat, sunglasses, graying hair tucked into a tight bun. Narina, my mother's friend, the one who used to give me religious pamphlets about obedience and modesty, then spend hours gossiping about problem women. Elowen was standing behind me now. Is that who told me I'd never go home if I said anything? I didn't look away from the peephole. Yes, I said. She didn't say anything else. Just turned and started folding her clothes into her backpack. I stepped back from the door and whispered, "Pack fast." Because the moment they showed up in person, this wasn't a warning anymore. It was war. I told them to meet me in public, somewhere neutral, somewhere neither of us could control. No silent rooms, no closing doors. I wanted witnesses. The cafe I picked was attached to a co-op bookstore in a small town just outside Provo. It smelled like chamomile and printer ink. College students hunched over laptops. Retired folks nursed black coffee with local newspapers folded under their arms. No one looked twice when I walked in. I chose a table near the window, facing the door. Elowen sat beside me, knees pulled up under her chair, her sketchbook already open on the table like it had always belonged there. I had texted Eris and Lumen just one line the night before. If you want the truth, meet me in public. No more lies in kitchens. They came. Of course they came. Eris entered first, sunglasses still on indoors, that saccharine smile plastered across her face like it had been stapled there. Lumen followed behind, hair pulled tight, lips tighter. She wore pearls. Always the funeral version of herself. They sat without asking. Eris didn't waste a second. You look tired. I nodded. You look practiced. She blinked once. We just want to clear the air. I pulled a file folder from my bag and laid it on the table. You knew what was in that bag? Lumen straightened her posture. Now hold on. And so did she, I said, tilting my head toward Eris. And if either of you pretend otherwise, this whole folder goes somewhere louder. Eris tilted her head. Seraphine, you're spiraling. I opened the sketchbook. Elowen didn't speak. She didn't have to. The drawings did the talking. Page 1, the red bag, same stitching, same logo tag. Page 2, the black van, tinted windows. Page 3, a man with sunglasses and a long coat standing at the edge of our driveway. Page 4, a woman with a scarf around her neck, labeled in a shaky hand. The one who smells like Nana's perfume. Lumen's face twitched. Just once. Eris exhaled. It's a child's doodle. I slid the last page across the table. Funny how her doodles line up with a GPS tracker. They didn't respond, so I kept going. I pulled out photocopies from the file, documents pulled from the bag, a fake medical intake, a false birth certificate with Elowen's name spelled incorrectly, a burner phone log showing 5 calls to a number registered in Nevada, a tablet with timestamps matching the days we were supposed to travel. I didn't unzip it until Wyoming, I said, but you knew I wouldn't check, that I'd be too afraid to cause a scene. Eris scoffed. You're making this bigger than it is. Am I? I asked. You gave me a bag you didn't pack, told me to carry it across a border, with my daughter in the car. What did you think would happen if they found it? Silence. Lumen shifted her teacup, her first deliberate movement. You don't know what you've started. I leaned forward, slow. No. You don't know what I've ended. And then I pulled out the final piece. A photo. The bag, neatly placed on their front porch. Their Ring camera caught the timestamp. I didn't take it across, I said. I returned it, untouched, so whatever happens next, that's yours. Neither of them moved. Neither denied it. There was no point. I stood, gently nudging Elowen's shoulder. Let's go, sweetheart. As we left, I saw Eris pick up her phone. Her mouth moved. I read the words clear as day. She's going public. Back at the car, Elowen sat quietly, then handed me her tablet. A new photo had been texted. No sender. It was our car, parked exactly where we'd left it. They're still watching, she said. I looked around. I didn't flinch. Good, I replied. So are we? 2 days had passed since the cafe. Since I looked my mother in the face and returned the wreckage she tried to hide in plain sight. Since Eris dropped her act and Lumen dropped her silence. Now we were somewhere near Boise, tucked into a safe house that looked like the kind of rental you'd use for fly fishing or vanishing. A friend of a friend arranged it, cash up front, no names, no internet history. The blinds stayed shut. The phones stayed off, but the television, muted in the corner, was always on. I was halfway through a lukewarm mug of coffee when I saw her face again. The news chyron scrolled across the bottom of the screen. Federal investigation expands into tri-state smuggling operation. Elowen was on the rug, sketching trees and birds. She didn't look up, but I did. There she was, Eris Caldwell, my sister, smiling in a Facebook photo next to a headshot of a man I didn't recognize but would now never forget. He was listed as James Torrance, alleged organizer. Eris? Associate. Lumen wasn't pictured, just labeled as a person of interest. I turned up the volume. The anchor continued. Sources say the case hinges on an abandoned package found on the doorstep of a Caldwell family home. Unopened, but marked as personal property. Investigators confirm it contained forged identification, blank medical intake forms, and evidence of trafficking logistics. That was the bag. My breath stuck halfway in my throat. They planned to bury me with a bag and call it a family errand. I turned the volume down again, not for privacy, but because I already knew the story. I just didn't expect to hear it told in past tense, with me still alive. Later that afternoon, I tried to transfer money from my account to pay for temporary homeschooling materials. The transaction failed. I tried again. Same result. My bank app pinged a red alert. Account frozen. Please contact fraud department. My stomach dropped. I called the number on the screen, already bracing for what I knew was coming. Ma'am? The voice said, polite but distant. Your account has been flagged temporarily due to an ongoing investigation connected to a property listing traced to a fraud claim in Utah. Name associated, Eris Caldwell. I was removed from that listing months ago, I said, gripping the phone tighter. The woman paused. I'm sorry, but your name still appears on secondary documentation as a financial contributor. We're obligated to... I hung up. My hands trembled, not from fear, but from something deeper. I'd expected betrayal. But this was erasure. They weren't just trying to use me, they were trying to delete me. That night, an anonymous email appeared in my backup inbox, the subject line, Proof. Inside was a scanned document, a title deed, originally in both my and Eris's names, now edited, months ago, to remove mine entirely. I hadn't signed anything. I hadn't even known it was possible. But there it was. When you're erased on paper, the only proof left is your voice. I opened my encrypted files, attached the photos from the red bag, and posted them anonymously on a private whistleblower blog. I didn't include names, just facts, just images, just the truth. It wasn't about justice anymore. It was about record-keeping. So that someday, if someone asked what happened, there'd be a version that didn't come from them. After Elowen fell asleep, I sat by the window, watching the empty street. The air felt too still. My burner phone buzzed. I froze. No caller ID, no voicemail icon, just a ringing. I answered. You did the right thing, the voice said. Low, male, older. But now they know you're talking. I opened my mouth, but the line clicked dead before I could speak. I stared at the phone in my hand. Elowen's voice broke the silence. Who was that? I turned to her, calm. Hopefully someone's still inside, and not someone too late. Because the more light you bring, the harder the shadows fight back. We were barely halfway through Boise when I decided it was time. I pulled over at a quiet park with free Wi-Fi, opened my laptop, and connected to the nearest public signal. Elowen sat in the back seat, humming softly as she colored. This time, no vans, no people with hidden faces, just sunflowers, and a house. I uploaded everything. The images from the bag, the GPS tracker, the birth certificate with her name spelled wrong, the forged medical papers. The folder labeled, What They Asked Me to Deliver, went live on a public data leak forum. I didn't sign my name, but I didn't hide the truth either. Within 3 hours, a local journalist picked it up. And within 5, we saw it scroll across the bottom of the TV screen inside a diner on the edge of town. Breaking. Tri-state trafficking investigation tied to prominent Utah family. Elowen didn't notice, but I did. Footage ran on the screen. Helicopters over a suburban home. Law enforcement in black jackets entering a beige 2-story with 2 perfect flower beds. The anchor spoke, calm but sharp. Eris Caldwell, sister of local real estate developer Luman Caldwell, was arrested earlier today while attempting to cross the Nevada state line with 2 accomplices. Officials confirmed the arrest was assisted by anonymous evidence uploaded to a whistleblower site. They cut to a clip of Luman being escorted out of her home, hands cuffed but head held like royalty. The reporters swarmed her, asking, "Did you know what was in the bag?" and "Are you connected to Torrance?" She didn't answer, just gave a cold, polished smile to the cameras, as if the scandal belonged to someone else. Back at the motel, there was a knock. I opened the door slowly. Deputy badge, familiar face, Ben Marcus, class of '98. We used to sneak off campus together for milkshakes and conversation that always skirted just shy of confession. He gave me a look that said he hadn't forgotten a thing. "I figured it was you," he said, lowering his voice. When I saw the photos posted, then matched the timestamps to local road cameras, it all clicked. I stepped outside, pulled the door half shut. "Are you here officially?" "Nope. But I thought you should know. Those files, they gave us what we needed. We've been watching them for months. You handed us the last legal nail." I didn't say thank you, just nodded. "Take care of yourself," he added, before turning down the stairs and disappearing. Later that evening, I checked my bank account out of habit. For the first time in over a week, the balance loaded. No red alerts, no error messages. The funds were back, unfrozen. A formal email had arrived too. "We apologize for the inconvenience. Your account has been restored following clarification of an erroneous fraud flag." I didn't smile. I didn't laugh. I whispered, "I didn't ask for an apology. I asked for my life back." Elowen was sitting on the floor, crayons scattered around her like a tiny artist's riot. Her drawing had a roof this time, curtains in the windows, a fence. "A house," she said. "Ours." I sat beside her and added color with my finger, just a stroke of blue in the sky. "I didn't want revenge," I told her softly. "I wanted a record, and now they're in it." That night, we locked the doors. I checked them twice. Elowen slept in my bed again, curled toward the wall like she always had before the world cracked open. At 2:11 a.m., I heard the shuffle of paper under the front door. No knock, no footfalls, just silence. I waited, then rose, retrieved the envelope. No stamp, no handwriting. One line typed on crisp paper. "Truth has consequences." I folded it, lit a match, burned it in the kitchen sink. Let the ashes swirl down the drain before whispering, "So does betrayal." Back in the bedroom, Elowen stirred. "Mom?" "Yeah?" "Are we safe now?" I watched her breathing settle, her face softened into sleep. for tonight," I whispered. "And tomorrow, I make sure it's forever." Because some endings require no permission, only decision. 3 days after the arrests, the birds woke me. Not sirens, not news alerts, not the buzz of a phone I didn't want to answer. Just birdsong. Sweet, persistent, alive in a way that didn't demand anything from me. I lay there for a long moment, still under the quilt someone else had stitched, in a cabin someone else had loaned, letting the quiet settle into places that had only known tension. Elowyn was curled beside me, breathing slow and even, her cheeks smushed into the pillow, her fingers tangled in the edge of her shirt. She hadn't slept this peacefully in weeks, maybe months. It was the first time I'd watched her sleep without scanning the windows or double-checking the door. Safety doesn't feel like celebration. It feels like stillness. I made coffee with the percolator and sat out on the porch as steam curled through the cold morning. The forest around us didn't know who I used to be. It didn't care that I used to bend over backward for people who saw me as a means to an end. Later that afternoon, I stopped by the tiny library in town, just long enough to check the one email account I hadn't shut down. There was one message, from Lumen, no subject, no salutation, just a single sentence. "You were always so dramatic." I stared at it for longer than it deserved. I didn't reply. I didn't archive it. I didn't even delete it. I just closed the tab and walked away. Back at the cabin, Elowyn was sitting at the table holding something small in her hand. A necklace, hers. A charm I gave her 3 birthdays ago, hidden now in the bottom of her backpack with a cracked clasp. "Where'd you find it?" I asked. She shrugged. "It was stuffed under the front seat. I thought I lost it." I took it gently, examined the break, pulled out the mini pliers I always carried in the back of the first aid kit, and fixed the clasp. As I clipped it back around her neck, I whispered, "Nothing they hide from you changes who gave it to you." She smiled and looked down at the charm like it meant more now than it ever had before. That night, after dinner and dishes and silence and stillness, I sat down with pen and paper. I wrote a letter. To Eris. I didn't plan to send it. I didn't even sign it. But I wrote it anyway, for myself, not her. It didn't beg, it didn't curse, it just named things. Named what was done. Named how I was used. Named how I saw her now, not as a villain, but as someone who always needed an audience and mistook me for the stage. "Letting go isn't forgiving," I wrote. "It's refusing to carry what was never yours." When I finished, I folded the letter once and tucked it in the bottom drawer. The next morning, I applied for a new job. Remote, quiet, predictable. No family referrals, no complicated networks. Just me, a screen, and work I could do without second-guessing my worth. Elowyn started at a local homeschool pod that met in a converted barn. The parents were kind. Nobody asked questions. We stopped by a thrift store that weekend and bought a second-hand wreath, a bin of tangled holiday lights, and a chipped ceramic angel with a cracked wing. We made a little ritual of decorating the porch, stringing the lights through the pine beams, hanging the angel near the door. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours. "We didn't lose a family," I told Elowyn as we plugged in the lights. "We lost a story that was never ours." That night, I went to the post office to mail a few forms and check the box I'd opened under a different name. The clerk, gray beard, flannel shirt, name tag that read Hank, handed me the mail and said casually, "Someone came by asking for you two. Didn't leave a name, just said they were family." I didn't blink. I smiled. "I don't have family," I said. "I have a daughter. And she's the only legacy I'll ever protect again." 2 weeks after the last knock on our door, we walked into the courthouse with new names and old truths. I hadn't stepped inside a courtroom since the custody hearing for my niece 7 years ago. I remembered how quiet the hallways were, how the echo of heels sounded like warnings. This time, though, I wasn't there to defend someone else's mistake. I was there to correct my own history. We filed the paperwork just after 10 a.m. Elowyn's new last name matched mine, not my maiden name. Not Sable's, not anything handed down, just something new, ours alone. I signed the documents with a hand that didn't tremble. Power isn't a scream, it's a signature on the dotted line that says, I'm done playing your daughter. On our way out, Elowen reached into her coat pocket and handed me an envelope. I hadn't seen it in weeks. I thought it was long gone. Inside was the map she'd drawn back in the motel, the one I thought was just a child's fantasy. It wasn't. It was how I knew what to do if you ever got taken, she said softly. I held the paper, stunned. It was simple. Boxes for each room, a dotted line out the window, a scribbled car. But it wasn't pretend. It was a plan. Her plan. A child's attempt to prepare for something no child should ever have to. That night, I posted one final article. No photo, no name, just her map, and a title, When Family is the First Trap. It went viral overnight. By morning, I had 23 voicemails from media outlets. A national podcast reached out by email. They wanted to adapt the story. I'll consider it, I replied, but only if I get final edit. You gave them years of silence, the producer wrote back. Give yourself 1 hour of truth. I thought about it. Truth wasn't always loud, but when you carried it long enough, it deserved to be heard. A week later, I mailed an envelope to the prison in Nevada where Eris was being held. No note, no return address. Inside, a photo of Elowen standing in front of our cabin, holding a daisy she picked herself, smiling at the camera like she had nothing to fear. On the back, I wrote, "Still safe, still free, without you." We planted a tree that same afternoon. It wasn't a big tree, just a sapling we got from a local nursery. Elowen picked it, said it looked patient. We dug the hole together, hands in dirt, boots in mud. It felt holy in a way church never had. What should we name it? I asked, brushing hair from her face. Proof, she said. No hesitation. I smiled. Let the world see what grows when you stop watering poison. It wasn't just a tree, it was a monument. Not to what we lost, but to what we refused to carry forward. Later that night, we sat by the fire, marshmallows melting on sticks, ash floating like snowflakes. Elowen leaned against me. Are we finally done? I wrapped my arm around her and thought about it. Not everything ends in a courtroom. Not every name change means freedom. But for us, it was a start. For now, I said. And next time, if they come looking, they'll find something they never expected. The screen in my head went black. Then my voice came through. My name is Seraphine Monroe, and this is how I stopped being their daughter and became my daughter's protector. Coming soon, the story they tried to erase. Because the most powerful stories are told by the ones who survived them.